Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something fundamental nutrition during pregnancy. It's genuinely the most intense growth phase humans ever go through.
Absolutely. We've basically distilled a key chapter covering this, aiming to give you a solid, quick grasp of the physiology, the nutrition needed, and importantly, the health impacts down the line.
And we really have to start with a bit of a reality check, context-wise. The U.S. spends a huge amount on healthcare, right? But we're like 50th globally in infant mortality.
It's quite stark. And our maternal mortality rate, it's about 76% higher than other high-income countries. It really highlights the need for focus.
So where is that focus? What are the big targets?
There are two main areas national health goals are trying to improve. Low birth weight that's under 2,500 grams, or 5 pounds 8 ounces, and preterm delivery, meaning before 37 weeks.
Okay, so hitting that weight target, why is that number, that range, so critical? What are the actual stakes involved?
The stakes couldn't be higher, really. Infants born in that optimal window, say 3,500 to 4,500 grams, have the lowest risk of dying in their first year, and generally they have much better long-term health.
So achieving that isn't just passive. The mother's body has to actively make it happen.
Exactly. It requires a massive, coordinated biological effort.
Let's jump into that first post. The body's incredible transformation.
Yeah, it's amazing how it shifts gears. It's not just waiting around, it's actively adapting.
Precisely. And for a long time, some of these changes, like the huge increase in body water, were seen as problems. People were told to cut sodium way back or really restrict weight gain.
Which sounds logical on the surface, maybe?
It does, but the crucial understanding now is that these physiological shifts are absolutely essential. They're adaptive. Trying to, fix them can actually cause harm.
That's fascinating. So the body isn't just changing randomly, it's following a plan, a sequence.
Totally sequential. First, the mother's plasma volume has to expand that peaks around 20 weeks. It gets the circulatory system ready.
Then comes building up nutrient stores, growing the placenta, increasing blood flow to the uterus, the fetus itself. Maximal weight gain happens pretty late, peaking near 37 weeks. It's all orchestrated.
And that plasma volume increase you mentioned, it can be up to 50%. That's huge. What does that look like in, say, a blood test?
Right. That leads to something called hemodilution. It's a dilution effect.
What?
With, maybe 2 extra gallons of water circulating, the concentration of lots of vitamins and minerals looks lower in the blood.
Ah, so it might flag as low, but it isn't necessarily a deficiency.
Often, no. It's just a normal consequence of having more fluid volume. Doesn't mean requirements don't go up for some things, because they definitely do, but the baseline concentration changes.
Okay. And the body's whole energy processing system must change too. Like with carbs, there's this thing called the diabetogenic effect of pregnancy. Sounds a bit scary.
It does sound alarming, but it's actually adaptive. Basically, the mother becomes slightly more insulin resistant, especially later in pregnancy.
Why would the body do that?
To make sure glucose, which is the fetus's absolute preferred fuel source, stays readily available in the bloodstream for fetal growth. It's like the body's saying, okay, fetus gets priority for sugar, even if mom's blood sugar runs a little higher.
Wow. So a temporary state of mild carbohydrate intolerance, essentially, to feed the baby. Does that cause long-term issues for the mother?
Usually no. It's typically just for the pregnancy and resolves afterwards. Similar thing happens with fats, plasma triglycerides, and cholesterol levels shoot way up.
Which normally you'd worry about for heart health.
Right, but during pregnancy, these high levels are needed for making steroid hormones, and crucially, they're generally not considered atherogenic. They don't seem to contribute to hardening of the arteries in this specific context.
Got it. And going back to the sodium thing, why is cutting back a bad idea then?
Because the kidneys are working hard to retain sodium precisely to support that massive plasma volume expansion we talked about.
Ah, so restricting it interferes with that essential process.
Exactly. Low-sodium diets are definitely not recommended during a normal, healthy pregnancy. You're fighting against what the body needs to do.
Okay, let's talk about the placenta. It's the interface, right? Often called a lifeline, but you mentioned it's more like a fence than a perfect filter.
That's a great way to put it. It's crucial, yes, makes hormones, handles nutrient and gas exchange, removes waste, but it's not a perfect barrier.
Meaning harmful things can get through.
Absolutely. Alcohol, listeria, bacteria from contaminated food, certain drugs they could pass right through to the fetus.
That's sobering.
And another key point, the fetus isn't a parasite that just takes whatever it needs. If the mother's nutrient supply is low, the placenta actually prioritizes its own needs first to maintain the pregnancy structure. The fetus often suffers the lack of nutrients more directly than the mother does initially.
Okay, so this complex physiology sets the stage, which brings us to timing. When do these nutritional factors matter the most?
Timing is absolutely critical. We talk about critical periods. These are specific time windows, mostly concentrated in the first 2 months, where organs and tissues are rapidly forming through cell multiplication or hyperplasia.
And these windows are non-negotiable, right? Once they pass, they pass.
Exactly. They are non-reversible. If a key nutrient is missing during that specific window for, say, heart development or brain structure, the defect caused can be permanent. No amount of later supplementation can fully fix it.
The textbook example is always neural tube defects, like spina bifida.
Precisely. That structural issue is directly linked to not having enough folate way back in weeks 3 and 4 after conception, often before a woman even knows she's pregnant. Miss that window, and the structure is compromised.
So this concept of critical periods helps understand newborn size differences. You mentioned SGA, small for gestational age.
Right. If a baby is born SGA, meaning their weight is below the 10th percentile for their gestational age, understanding when the growth restriction happened is key.
Okay, there are two types. Let's start with DSGA, disproportionately SGA. What does that look like?
These babies often look skinny, sort of wasted. It usually means the malnutrition or nutrient restriction happened late in pregnancy. It compromised their fat stores and liver glycogen, but because of the main structural formation, the critical periods were likely okay.
Their cell numbers are probably normal.
Generally, yes. So they might have issues right at birth like low blood sugar, those hypos, but they usually have good potential to catch up on growth later if nutrition is adequate.
But the other type, PSGA, proportionately SGA, that's different.
Very different and carries more long-term risk. These infants are small all over, but their body proportions might look normal. This suggests the nutritional deficit happened early, during those critical periods of cell multiplication.
So they have fewer cells overall.
Correct. They have reduced cell numbers in their organs and tissues, and because of that fundamental difference, they often show poorer long-term catch-up growth, even with good nutrition after birth.
This leads directly into probably the most profound concept here. DOHAD, the developmental origins of health and disease. The idea that things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, they might actually have roots in utero. It's a paradigm shift. This concept is underpinned by developmental plasticity and epigenetics.
Epigenetics, that's about changing how genes work without changing the DNA code itself. Right.
Exactly. Environmental cues, like nutrient availability in the womb, can modify gene function. The fetus essentially reads the maternal environment. If it senses scarcity, like low glucose supply,
And adapts for survival.
yes, it programs its genes for survival in what it anticipates will be a nutrient-poor world outside. This is the thrifty phenotype. It becomes very efficient at storing energy.
Which sounds great if you're actually born into famine.
Perfect adaptation for that. But if that child is born into our modern environment with abundant food, especially processed food, that thrifty programming becomes a major liability.
Because the body is primed to conserve energy and store fat. Precisely. Leading to increased risk of insulin resistance, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease later in life. It's an evolutionary mismatch between the predicted environment and the actual one.
Wow. That really underscores the importance of maternal nutrition. Okay, let's shift to the practical recommendations, starting with weight gain. It's not one size fits all, is it? It depends on pre-pregnancy BMI.
Correct. The guidelines are tailored because the starting point matters for outcomes. For a single baby, if pre-pregnancy BMI was underweight, 18.5, the goal is 28 to 40 pounds.
Okay.
Normal weight, BMI 18.5, 24.9, is 25 to 35 pounds. Overweight, BMI 25, 29.9 is 15 to 25 pounds. And for those starting with obesity, BMI 030, the recommendation is 11 to 20 pounds.
And following these ranges is associated with the lowest risk of problems for both mother and baby.
Yes, that's the evidence base. It's also interesting, as you noted, that the baby itself is only about a third of that total gain. The rest is placenta, amniotic fluid, increased blood volume, maternal fat stores, all essential support systems.
What about actual calories? Do pregnant women really need to eat for two?
Not really in terms of quantity, especially early on. The average additional need is only about 300 calories per day, and that's mostly in the second and third trimesters. But honestly, the best way to know if energy intake is adequate isn't strict calorie counting.
It's tracking whether the weight gain is on target with those BMI-based recommendations.
Exactly. Appropriate weight gain is the most practical indicator.
Okay, let's dive into some key micronutrients. We mentioned folate earlier for neural tube defects. Let's nail down the specifics.
Right, folate is crucial for DNA synthesis and cell division. The recommendation is 600 micrograms DFE, that's dietary folate equivalents per day. Importantly, this includes 400 micrograms specifically from folic acid, which is the synthetic form found in fortified foods and supplements because it's better absorbed.
Is there an upper limit? Too much folic acid?
Yes, there is. The tolerable upper intake level for folic acid is 1,000 micrograms per day. Going above that consistently can potentially mask the signs of a vitamin B12 deficiency, which is also serious. So balance is key.
Okay, next up, iron. This requirement really skyrockets, doesn't it?
It really does. The total extra iron needed over the course of the pregnancy is about 1,000 milligrams. It's huge.
Wow, why so much?
Primarily for the massive expansion of the mother's red blood cell mass to carry more oxygen, and also for the fetus's own blood supply and storage.
And deficiency is a problem.
A major problem.
Mm.
Iron deficiency anemia during pregnancy significantly increases the risk of preterm delivery and having a low birth weight baby. That's why screening is standard. And the CDC even uses different cutoffs during pregnancy, for instance. A hemoglobin below 10.5 GDL in the second trimester signals anemia.
Makes sense. What about omega-3s? DHA and EPA seem crucial too.
Absolutely critical, especially for the baby's brain and eye development, specifically the central nervous system and retina. They accumulate rapidly, particularly in the third trimester.
And the recommendation?
Aim for about 300 milligrams per day of DHA and EPA combined. The easiest way for most people to get this is by eating 2 to 3 servings per week of cooked, low-mercury fish.
Like salmon, shrimp, pollock, those kinds of options.
Exactly. Those are good, safe choices during pregnancy.
Are there any other micronutrients we should quickly highlight?
Yes, definitely vitamin D. The RDA is 15 micrograms or 600 IU, but deficiency is actually quite common. Many experts recommend, and many women require, higher supplementation, often in the range of 1,000 to 2,000 IU per day, especially if sun exposure is limited.
Okay.
And choline is another important one. The AI is 450 milligrams per day. It works alongside folate in supporting neural tube development and overall brain structure.
Good to know. Now, moving beyond just the nutrients themselves, what about other things that affect how or what a pregnant woman eats? Like changes in taste or smell? Dysgeusia, is that the term?
Yes, dysgeusia. It's very common. Suddenly coffee might smell repulsive or meat tastes metallic. Conversely, some women develop really strong cravings, often for sweets or dairy. It can definitely make getting a balanced diet a bit challenging.
And then there's pica. This one is fascinating, the compulsion to eat non-food items, like ice or even clay.
It sounds strange, but it's a real clinical sign. Compulsively eating ice chips, freezer frost, clay, dirt, laundry starch. That happens.
Is there a reason for it?
The exact cause isn't fully understood. It's complex, but pica, especially the craving for ice, pygophagia, is very strongly linked to iron deficiency. Sometimes, simply treating the anemia makes the craving vanish completely.
Wow. Okay, let's offer some practical tips for common discomforts. Nausea and vomiting, morning sickness, though it can happen anytime, usually gets better after the first trimester, right? What helps?
Yeah, it tends to ease up. Strategies that often help include separating liquid and solid foods, don't drink much with meals, eat small frequent meals and snacks so the stomach is never totally empty, and stick with bland, easily tolerated foods, crackers, toast, yogurt, broth.
What about heartburn? That seems common later on.
Very common as the uterus grows. Again, small frequent meals help. Avoid eating a large meal right before bed. Don't lie down immediately after eating. And propping the head up with pillows when sleeping can make a big difference.
And the inevitable constipation.
Best approach is fiber and fluids. Aim for around 30 grams of dietary fiber per day from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and really push fluid at least 8, maybe up to 12 glasses of water or other liquids daily.
Good advice. Now, a positive note. Exercise. Is it safe? Is it beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely beneficial and generally very safe for most healthy pregnancies.
Yeah.
Regular, moderate exercise, even just 20 minutes a day, can help prevent lower back pain, may shorten labor, and lowers the risk of developing gestational diabetes and preeclampsia. Highly encouraged, unless there's a specific medical reason not to.
That's great news. Okay, we need to wrap up with a crucial topic. Food safety. You mentioned pregnant women are more susceptible.
Yes, hormonal changes, particularly increased progesterone, slightly suppress the immune system, making pregnant women more vulnerable to certain foodborne pathogens.
Which ones are the biggest concern for the fetus?
2 stand out. First, Listeria monocytogenes. It's a bacteria that can be found in things like unpasteurized milk, soft cheeses like feta, brie, queso fresco, unless made with pasteurized milk, raw sprouts, smoked seafood, and deli meats or hot dogs that haven't been heated until steaming hot.
And the risk.
Listeria infection can cross the placenta and lead to miscarriage, stillbirth, or severe illness in the newborn. So avoiding those high-risk foods is critical.
Okay, what's the second one?
Toxoplasma gondii. This is a parasite. Infection during pregnancy can cause serious problems for the fetus, including brain damage,
How do you get exposed?
primarily from eating raw or undercooked meat or through contact with contaminated soil or cat feces like cleaning a litter box. So cook meat thoroughly, wash produce well, and if possible, have someone else handle cat litter duties during pregnancy or wear gloves and wash hands thoroughly afterwards.
Crucial safety tips. Okay, let's try to boil this all down. If you had to pick, say, 3 absolute main takeaways from our deep dive today, what would they be?
Okay, 3 key things. First, those big physiological changes during pregnancy. It's like the fluid increase and altered metabolism. They're necessary and adaptive.
Yeah.
Don't view them as problems to be fixed in a normal pregnancy.
Got it. Number 2.
Second, recognize the power and finality of critical periods. Early nutrition, especially for nutrients like folate, has non-reversible impacts on development. Timing is everything.
Makes sense. And the third, maybe the biggest picture idea.
I think it has to be the DHA concept. Understanding that maternal nutrition doesn't just impact the pregnancy or the newborn, but plays a fundamental role in programming the child's long-term health and risk for chronic diseases decades down the road. What happens in the womb echoes for a lifetime.
That idea of developmental plasticity, the fetus adapting, potentially programming itself for thriftiness that backfires later, it's incredibly powerful. It definitely leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It really does. It prompts a big question for the future, If we understand that these adverse exposures in utero can trigger epigenetic changes that increase disease risk,
Can we undo them?
right? Could nutritional science or other interventions eventually find ways to identify these detrimental epigenetic marks and maybe rescue or reprogram them? Could we help align a person's physiology with their actual adult environment rather than the one predicted based on their time in the womb?
A fascinating and hopeful thought to consider. Well, thank you for walking us through all of that.
My pleasure.
And thank you, our listeners, for taking this deep dive with us today. We hope this gives you a really solid understanding of this critical topic.